Ukrainians are celebrating in the streets of Kherson after Russia withdrew its troops from the key southern city. Videos have shown people singing, waving Ukrainian flags and shouting glory to the armed forces. So just how significant is the loss of Kherson for Russia? Well, let's speak to Michael Clarke, who is former director of the Royal United Services Institute and a defence analyst. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So just answer that question for us. How significant a loss is it for Russia?
Oh, this is the biggest single military loss that they have suffered. In a sense, the failure to take Kiev early in the war was a major problem. But the fact is that they took Kherson, which is the only provincial city that they did take, and now they've lost it. And it's not just Kherson itself, it's the Kherson Oblast, because all Russian forces west of the river Dnieper are now withdrawing to the eastern side of the river, and have withdrawn. There's some rumours that there may still be some who found themselves on the wrong side of the river, and if so, that they're going to be in real trouble. But effectively, the Russians have actually given up that side of the river. And it emphasises the fact that originally, you see, they wanted to rush further westwards to take Mykolaiv and then Odessa, effectively to take the whole of the coast of the Black Sea coast of Ukraine, to landlock the country. But they were held at Mykolaiv. And so this withdrawal, in a sense, is the end of the Battle of Mykolaiv. They failed to take Mykolaiv. They didn't get near to Odessa. And now those forces have been sitting the wrong side of the river, hard to sustain, not contributing anything really other than occupying the city. And now they've had to get out. So it's significant in a military sense.
It's interesting. I've been reading some comments by some pro-war Russian military bloggers who have been really angry about the retreat, criticising the decision. Of course, a decision which President Putin isn't owning himself. He's saying this is the generals who made this decision, not him.
Yes, very interesting. There's a charming little video that we've all seen of Sorovikin, the commander, as explaining to Shoigu, the defense minister, with a map behind him, and making the decision in public. When I couldn't stop laughing when I saw it, because I kept thinking, I wonder if it'd be like this in our own Ministry of Defence, where the Chief of Defence Staff goes into the minister and says, "Well, Minister, I've been thinking about all these things. I think we should withdraw all of our troops from NATO." And the Minister of Defence says, "Yes, I think you're probably right." It just made me laugh. It was so transparently risible. But as you say, the important thing about that little charming film was who wasn't in it. I mean, this is Putin, as it were, telling Sorovikin and Shoigu to make this little movie so that he deliberately wasn't in it. And of course, this is what Putin does. I mean, if you think back to the pandemic, all of the lockdown in Russia, very long and quite hard lockdown, which took a long time, was very unpopular. Putin didn't own that either. He gave that to all of the regional governments, who he ignored most of the time. But when it comes to bad news, he makes sure that somebody else has to take the burden of it. And that's what he was doing in this case.
So what happens now as the Russians withdraw from Kherson? Are we expecting that they will? I know there's reports of them digging in on one side of the Dnipro River. I'm just wondering, do you think they will attack again? Will they retreat? What does this mean for the course of the war?
Oh, this battle is only half won as far as the Ukrainians are concerned in Kherson itself, because Kherson is not at all safe. The Russians are on the other side of the river. They almost certainly will start now to offer to create an artillery barrage against Kherson. It's what they did in Mariupol. It's what they did in Severodonetsk. It's what they tried to do in Kharkiv. And the Ukrainians had to push the Russians back out of artillery range to keep Kharkiv safe. So Kherson will only be safe if and when the Ukrainians can push them back another 30 or 40 kilometers out of artillery range. And that means one of two things. Either there's going to be a sort of an artillery battle across the river, artillery, counter-battery fire, air power, and so on, where the Ukrainians are trying to suppress Russian artillery the other side of the river, or, more ambitiously, the Ukrainians have got to cross the river themselves, somewhere in the north, at somewhere like Berislav, at Novokakhovka, and actually put pressure on the Russians on their flank from the north, so they have to withdraw. Somehow or other, the Ukrainians have got to negate Russia's advantage in artillery and push them further away out of artillery range. Only then will Kherson City be safe.
Do we know for sure that all Russian troops are out of the city? I mean, I was reading that in the kind of rush to leave, some were dumping uniforms, putting civilian clothes on and trying to blend in.
Yeah, that's certainly true. At least it's certainly entirely plausible, and there are lots of reports of that. And some of those who are putting civilian clothes on might have been Spetsnaz troops who are special troops who work behind enemy lines in order to commit sabotage and disruption. So it's possible that they may have left some Spetsnaz units behind, in addition to troops themselves just deciding that they better get out, and they better do that in civilian clothes. There was a lot of chaos yesterday and the day before as the final elements of Russian forces tried to get out of Kherson. But if there are still troops left there in formed units, that's the question. Are they still in units where there is some discipline and supply and they've got some military viability? If there are any formed units, they're almost certainly further north. And if they are on the wrong side of the river, as I say, they're in trouble, because they will be surrounded or taken. They'll probably become prisoners. And one of the great propaganda advantages or battles of the narrative advantages that the Ukrainians really could get out of this is columns of Russian prisoners being marched away to a prison camp. That really would resound around the world. And my goodness, that would actually make some impression in Moscow. I don't know if that will happen, but if the Ukrainians do actually take prisoners, it will be a huge symbolic moment for them to take a significant number of prisoners and march them away under proper humanitarian control to a properly run prison camp.